Well, hello friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sierra, and this is Sierra the Book Addict, and I haven't been on this channel in like 6 months, and I'm really sorry. Things got away from me. You know how life is. But if you have kept up on my social media, which is Twitter and Instagram, then you would see I read a lot. So we're going to talk about the 20 books I finished in the second half of this year, because I suck. So I have my iPad, and we're just going to, just talk about what we read. So the last thing that I talked about in the video was Learning to See by Elsie Hooper. So we're not going to talk about that, because that's in the other video. But we'll talk about the rest of them. Okay, so the first book that I've read after that was The Mindwaker's Mind by Kristin Harmel. This was a super interesting historical fiction. So I read a lot of historical fiction, and I love reading it. So it was one of the interesting ones. I actually saw someone else read this recently, and they had all the feels as well as I did, so yeah. So this one's basically about a woman that she falls in love with a man who makes very fancy French champagne, but then when the Germans arrive in France, she is basically having to help her husband do a lot of different things in this winery, but also along with the head winemaker and his wife, which she's supposed to be getting along with, and things happen, and some secrets get revealed very close to the end over the true identity and some of the things that have happened throughout the book. It was very different. It was very heartbreaking. It didn't make me cry though. Some of them make me cry, some don't. It's just gonna give me like initial shock. And that one didn't give me initial shock, because the end you're just like, wait, what just happened? Who is this person? That one, yeah, that was quite a fun ride. So that one I give 4 stars to. The next gets me up to the third book in the series. So it'll be the Gentleman Bastard series, which is one of my personal favorite series. Excuse me. And so I actually read the third one because I was waiting for the fourth book, which was supposed to come out in October for my birthday. But it did not. It got delayed until July of this year. Super nice. So I finished the third one off thinking, okay, I'm going to get to read the fourth one, and it didn't happen. But I'm glad I finally read the third, which is The Republic of Thieves. This also got 4 stars. I'm not going to say a whole lot, because if you've read it's part of a series, so I don't want to spoil everything, but let's just say it was a lot slower and more political than the first two, so I wasn't really jamming with it, but I did have some elements in the beginning and at the end that were like, oh, okay. So we're setting up a good stage for the fourth book, and I hope to get to that this year. The next book was Mr. Flood's Last Resort by Jess Kidd. I know Jess Kidd is very well loved in the book community. This I found just really weird. So it's basically about a housekeeper that she has a traumatic childhood, and she's having to sort of help clean up this old man's house, and it's basically like a historical site, but he's basically trashed it to no end, and she keeps finding these clues about his daughter, and she finds out it's his daughter, and his wife. She claims that his wife had a traumatic death, and the daughter just mysteriously died herself, and the son is very hostile, and she has a landlady that is basically, she's transgender, and she's into tarot cards and just mysteries herself. And so it gets a little strange because that element, but also the fact that she has this attachment to all these different saints, and that she can see them, and they're like following her and making comments throughout the whole story. It was very different. Like, after I never read anything quite like it, but I didn't love it either. So this got 3 stars. Sorry, I keep reaching back. I just need to keep it on my lap. The next I read was a nonfiction, which is The Heart of Everything That Is, The Untold Story of Red Cloud, American Legend by Bob Dury. This was beautiful. Like, if you are not an American, then you probably don't know who Red Cloud is. He was the indigenous leader of the Sioux tribe during the 1800s. And he was kind of part of the many rebellions that happened during trying to take over native lands, during the time for colonization. It was really beautiful. Like, you as the reader definitely feel the power of his presence and what he wanted for his people, and the fact that the Americans did everything they could to destroy him, and the fact that he basically destroyed the Americans in a way, and then finally decided it was time to give peace and let the Americans take over, even though he didn't want to. Broke my heart, but the book was absolutely fantastic. It was a great piece of historical nonfiction. It's very long, but it is also very eye-opening in a way that, you don't know, because obviously what you read in American textbooks for our history definitely is not as truthful as some of the stuff like this, and it makes me sad, but I'm glad that someone created this book, and I got to read it, so it was great. Next was The Tales of Watership Down by Richard Adams. I forgot to say I gave this 5 stars. 4 stars. 4 stars. We'll be talking about this in the next video. About some changes. But anyway, The Tales of Watership Down by Richard Adams. So this turned out to be just a small novella behind the actual text of Watership Down. So these were like short stories. I didn't love them, but I'm still going to read Watership Down eventually, just because I remember reading and watching the movies and being freaked out, but also fascinated. So these weren't great, but they were also interesting. I give this 3 stars, just because it wasn't fantastic, but I think once I read the actual story, it should be great, so yeah. So next is a little bit of a controversial one, and this should be Red Sister, or The Book of the Ancestor, Book 1, by Mike Lawrence. Now, I know a lot of people have a problem with Mike Lawrence, and I understand that, but I am listening to these through audiobook, so I'm not particularly, supporting him by going out and buying the actual books. I'm listening to these through my local library, so, yeah. And I really liked the first one. It was very interesting. The characters are very prominent, very violent, and as a whole, it's good. I don't have a problem with it, but I understand that people would have a problem with some things controversial of this author. So if you don't know what this series is, it's basically about a planet very similar to Earth that has been it's almost like the Arctic, where ice is basically crushing down as much of the land as possible, so people are starting to have to live on ice, and it's about these different sorts of 4 different tribes of people who have these different skills, but it's very rare to have full-blooded anymore. And basically, this young girl named Nona, she is basically being considered a bad seed because she's trying to kill off one of the main family's sons due to cruelty. And so this abbess from this convent comes and takes her. But the fun part is the abbess is actually part of this whole religion where they're basically fighting nuns. It's very unique, and I don't know why, but I have a fascination with books that have to do with convents and nuns and priests and monks. Just love that for me. And so the series is very, very fun. It's very different, and if you're okay with trying to find an alternative ways to not support the author, like get it from your local library, then go ahead and do that. It's very good. I give this 4 stars, and I'll let you in with a little secret. I'm currently reading the second book right now, which won't be in my next wrap-up. But yeah, so far enjoying that. So next, we've actually read I think it's considered a contemporary. Please comment if I'm wrong. That is Assistance by Camille Perri. This was different for me, because it's not usually something I would gravitate towards, but it was on my list. So, I read it. I gave it 3 stars. It's basically about this woman that is an assistant to one of the richest men in the world, and she decides that she's going to borrow some of his money to pay off her student loans, which she does, but then she gets another woman involved, and they basically end up doing hers, and there comes this ginormous scandal, and they basically kind of fall in love. It was fun. It was really fun for me. There was something different. I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't like the best, but I enjoyed it. Next, I finally did it, guys. I read the holy grail of historical fiction, The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. Oh my god. I gave this 5 stars. It was so good. Like, I'm sad, but also happy I read this, because, damn, Kristin Hannah knows how to hit the sad tones, and I actually have the 4 wins on my TBR for this month, so I'm hoping to get to that. Same with The Great Alone, eventually, and the rest of her books. But, oh god, that just made me, I actually cried like 3 times reading it. So if you don't know what the Nightingale's about, it's basically about 2 sisters during World War II. One lives in the country and has a small family, and the other one is a younger sister that's dealing with her father, who basically got changed in World War I. Has to deal with the consequences of World War II, and she basically wants to be part of the resistance to get rid of the Germans, while the older sister is trying to stay alive. And they both have parental issues due to their father's non-love and his emotional distress during World War I and their mother's death. And it basically just discusses their life and how their survival goes throughout World War II. It was really beautiful. It made me cry. I'm finally glad I read it. I actually went to like a little reading slump with it. I started off reading it at the beginning of the year and then didn't finish reading it at all for like 6 months, then finally picked it up. So, yay! And then next, I actually started with Bringing Down the Duke, also known as the series The League of Extraordinary Women series, book 1 by Evie Dunmore. This is a romance with an element of like kind of political, I suppose. So it's basically about this young girl that she wants to go to college but can't, but then is told she can through her brother because he wants her to be like highly educated so she could teach like the governor's children or whatever. But she doesn't tell him that she got a scholarship through the Women's Suffrage Act. And this is basically where the women want to learn how to vote in England. And she basically, like her first day giving out flyers, she hands it to one of the dukes. And they kind of have like a hate-love relationship. I'm not a romance person whatsoever, so this was a bit out of my comfort zone, and I didn't really enjoy it. but I tried. So, yeah, I wasn't greatly impressed with it. I gave it 3 stars. And I don't think I'm going to continue. But I'm glad at least I tried. Next was another nonfiction. And this is the story of more, how we got to climate change and where to go from here by Hope Jahren. I'm probably not spelling that right. But this was a beautiful little book on climate change and was very simple and simplistic to understand and gave a lot of very good information and kind of gave us an idea of what we could do to possibly help with the climate change. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm not one for like overly sciencey books, but this was very understanding. I could follow along. I really liked some of the references and the personal inputs that she put, and I'm glad I read it. Like, it was definitely something worth to pick up, and I am slipping. Like, what is going on here? Start up here, go down there. Okay. Sorry. So next, I actually finished off Duology, which would have been, what is this called? One moment. Now Drop to Drink. There we go. So that's the Drop to Drink series, which would be a duology. And so the second would be A Handful of Deaths, and this continues with Lynn and Lucy, but now Lucy is like 16, where we started with Lynn's story, and we basically find that there's still struggles, and that the whole town kind of gets polio, and they have to leave because they consider her the source, and they have to travel to California to see if they can make a life for themselves in a desolate wasteland. So this is very apocalyptic. It's very sad, kind of a little bit scary, and I really enjoyed this. I gave 4 stars. I really thought it was very well done, and it was a good kind of ending to these characters. And it kind of very is impactful, because even though this is not what we're dealing with now, who could say that this part of this could happen at some point? And I am really struggling here, because I'm already 17 minutes back. Okay, moving on. I next started a trilogy, a young adult series, which is known as the Eagle and Jaguar series. This was part of my list. So the first one is called City of Beasts by Isabel and Allende. And this was really, really good. So this is about a young boy named Alexander, who basically is dealing with a lot of issues due to his mother's illness, and is sent to go with his grandmother Kate, who works for National Geographic, to go to the Amazon to look for basically like the Yeti version or Bigfoot version of the Amazon. And he meets the guide and his daughter Nadia, who he becomes friends with, and they both get these magical powers where he can turn into a jaguar and she can turn into an eagle, and they start helping like this tribe that's in the forest into reconnecting with their land, but also to stay away from white humans. And it was really, really good. There's a bit of betrayal, there's a bit of darkness. The series is actually quite dark for a middle grade, and I'm kind of surprised. But it was also very informative. I feel like she definitely did a great job with the representation of all 3 cultures in this whole series. So each focus on different cultures. So the second one is actually known as the Kingdom of the Golden Dragon, which is basically where they all go to Tibet. And they basically meet the Yetis, and they have like this cool fighting monk and this prince, and they have to save like a bunch of girls because they were kidnapped, because this lady who's part of the secret society wants this golden dragon, this golden gems. It was excellent. I gave this one 4 stars, and the first one 4 stars. Actually, I gave the whole series 4 stars. For each book, it was fantastic. So in between those two, I read All the Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and such a good book. Like, I listened to this as an audiobook. It was so impactful, and even though I am white and Hispanic and I'm not black, I really appreciated his experiences and that he was willing to share them with us. And I've definitely felt a meaning to wanting to hug him and just be like, thank you for being you. It was so good. Chef's kiss. I even tweeted it on Twitter, and he actually liked it back, so that made my day. So thank you, George, if you're watching. Next on the list was I've read The Atlas 6 by Olivie. I didn't love this as much as I wanted to. I felt like very dumb reading this. I know it's supposed to be like fictional. I felt like the actual sciencey quantum physics part was too real, and a lot of it went over my head. And it just wasn't the first part was fantastic. But then once they just kept talking about quantum physics and just stuff like that, and how really nothing really truthfully happened except for the end, didn't draw me in that much. I didn't enjoy it. And I'll probably read the second because I'm curious to see what happens, but I'm not over the moon about it. Which was sad. But oh well. I'm not gonna like every series I read. So lastly was The Force of the Pygmies, which is the third book in the Eagle and Jaguar series. And this one is set in Africa, and they're trying to rescue a bunch of pygmies that are stuck with one of those warlords in a village in basically the Congo. And it was really good. I would say definitely that the third one's the most darkest of the three, but I really thought they were very unique, and I would highly recommend picking them up. Next, we actually read was Kingston Wild, and oh my god, by Nicholas Eames. I'm in love. This was so much fun. Oh my god. I read this so quick, and I'm so sad. I can't wait to read Bloody Rose. I actually have that on my TBR for this month, and I'm hoping to get to it, because I loved it so much. Moog is literally my favorite person in the entire world. All four of them were just so amazing. The whole premise, the concept, it's basically the book you always want in a fantasy story, and it was just so great. I actually put this on my wish list just because I love it so much and I want a physical copy. Can't wait. And so I finally caught up to the Sherlock Holmes series, which I started this year. So I finally got to book 3. I thought it was going to be only a trilogy, and then she surprised us with releasing the 4th book. So I was actually going to be excited to say, oh, I finished the series. No. But I finally got to The Case of Jamie, and it was really good. It was definitely a little bit less dramatic as in the first 2, but it was really enjoyable. I like how they're growing as characters through each book, and it was difficult but cute at the same time. I like Jamie as a character, and I like Charlotte as a character. I just wish that they would stop being so freaking complicated towards one another and figure shit out. So Brittany, if you're listening, please. I hope the 4th book can give us some more light. And then we finally got to the last 2 books. I read the first book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. So Guardians of the Moon. What the fuck even is this book? I swear to God. This was one of the most complicated high fantasy books I've ever read, and a lot of it I'm just like, okay, what is happening? There's so many characters, so much happened. I can't even explain what I read because I don't even know. And there's like 10 books in this series. Good for me. But I'm going to try, and I'm probably going to try reading soon to the audiobook in the second book, just because it was too slow for me. It was a long book and extremely slow. So I'm going to try the audiobook, maybe reading with a physical book to see if that'll help. But we'll see. I might just end up listening to all of these on audiobook, because I don't have time for that. And I'll explain that in a second. And lastly, I got Stick by Michael Farris Smith, which is a kind of origin story of Nick from The Great Gatsby. And oh my god, this was slow, but it was also very heart-wrenching, and it hurt my soul. That really hurt. He's such a sad character. Like, oh my god. Just no. But I appreciated it. So I read 61 books in the year of 2021, and I'm so happy about that. It was so good, and I'm so happy. I really had a great reading year. And the next video is actually going to be my stats and my goals for 2022. So, yeah. So, I hope all of you will enjoy this video, and I will see you all later. Bye!